Yo, what is good, everybody? It's your boy Golden Falls, Golden What If, whatever you want to call me, and I'm back with part 2 of What If Deku was a bio android. And as y'all can tell, at least from part 1, y'all saw kind of the general direction that I was going with this what if, and I feel like it probably cleared up some questions that some of y'all would have had. But with that said, as always, please leave a like, please leave a sub, please comment down below any suggestions you have. It helps and makes my life a lot easier. I don't need any crazy description of a what if. Of course, this is my job to make the what ifs for you. So if you want to leave a suggestion down below by just leaving a title or leaving a very faint description, that's fine as well. And I'll try my best to get to y'all's suggestions, but of course I get a ton of suggestions, so if one pops out to me, I'll definitely do it. But yeah, that's about it. I don't need to say anything else. Check the links in the description. Like I said, do all that good stuff to support the channel, and that is about it. I'm not gonna waste that much more time, and let's get right into the what if. Let's get it. Last we left off, Izuku Midoriya finally finished the UA entrance exam. He was able to test out his power for the first time truly ever. Unrestricted and unknowingly to him, he was far more powerful than he could possibly imagine. He was able to show some things, and even beyond the levels of some pro heroes, especially on the way it looked about it in terms of the teachers. The teachers would watch on as Izuku would obliterate the UA entrance exam and could see that it seemed like as if he was just warming up. And to Izuku, of course he was. He was just warming up, but at the same time, he doesn't really understand his powers either. Some more time would pass and Izuku would head back to the League of Villains base, but also his main base, and only in contact with Overhaul. It seems that there has been a disconnect between him, his mother, or quote-unquote mother, which he questions even more now, but also some other people that he was working with, quote-unquote. Of course, Izuku is a product of literally just being made in a lab. That's who Izuku is. He doesn't remember even having a life before. He doesn't necessarily have human emotions. This is just what he is, a piece of work. But it seems as if the combination of all of this DNA from various other heroes and villains and many others alike gave him the will and want to fight. On top of that, giving him the urges of other things, as if basically wanting to learn and learn more and more. But of course, he's already has an extremely high IQ. Izuku would, with how many people he has DNA of. In terms of their IQ, it's extremely high as well, making his IQ extremely high. Izuku would continue on just working with what he had, mostly working with the League of Villains and knowing exactly what they wanted to get done. Izuku made it, or it was pretty clear that Izuku didn't want anything to do with the heroes, and it was as if he had a whole agenda himself. And of course, we know this to be completely true. Izuku does have his own agenda and does have his own thing that he needs to get done. The League of Villains is just basically a stepping stone to doing so, but of course Izuku can make up his own mind. He hasn't necessarily basically made up his mind in terms of what he's doing, in terms of Overhaul, in terms of the people that literally created him, and in terms of the people around him. And eventually he would get his letter sent to an unknown address. Of course, he doesn't actually live there, but he would pick it up, seeing the man, or a mailman, delivering that said letter. He would grab it to see that he obviously got into UA, and he would wait for the first day of UA to arrive. And when that first day would arrive, he would enter the classroom and would avoid all conversation, more or less. Not really talking to many people, and not even basically trying to interact as much as possible. Only reason for this is he knew his limitations. Even interacting just one-on-one wasn't the easiest thing for Izuku. He wasn't the best at conversation, and sometimes he would sound, well, really mean, way too nice, or even sometimes creepy. This is going to happen sometimes, especially when you're getting used to stuff like this. But just as he starts hearing more and people talk, and hearing more and more things, he'll eventually adapt perfectly, and he should be just fine in terms of being a conversationalist. Izuku would wait for his teacher to arrive, but just as he's sitting there, he sits there waiting, seeing every single classmate walk into the building, he would eventually see someone else. A boy with blonde spiky hair, and he would stare at him as he walks by. Izuku, deep down inside, for some reason, wanted to fight this kid. He wanted to fight him. He doesn't know why. He doesn't know the connection he has, or maybe any connection he has to him at all. But for some reason, that's him. He wants to fight him. He's not sure why. He doesn't understand it, and he gets the same feeling from people like All Might. When he sees him on a TV screen, he thinks to himself that he wants that challenge. But at the same time, what does all this truly mean? And maybe when he sees All Might in person, he won't actually feel this way. I mean, just like how he's feeling right now. Nonetheless, though, he keeps his calm and waits for his teacher to arrive, and it's Shota Aizawa. And he sees him and immediately can recognize who he is and knows exactly what his quirk is, because Shota Aizawa, or Eraserhead's quirk, is within Izuku. And he realizes this and even can believe to himself that maybe he knows and has the quirk of Aizawa as well. Aizawa begins to explain that they're not going to go to this little praising fest that they always go to normally, this orientation or whatever. No, they're actually going to have a bit of an assessment, a quirk assessment. Aizawa continues to look around and eventually spotting Izuku, not maintaining eye contact but seeing him, and even Izuku can dignify that Aizawa was making sure that he was in this class. He questions himself, Izuku does at least, thinking that maybe he knows that he's part of, well, the villain group for now and working with them. Or maybe he's just excited to have him in the class. Or maybe he's curious. He wants to know if Izuku really has just a strength enhancement quirk, or is it far more than that? Of course, we know it's far more than that. Izuku has many quote-unquote quirks, but these are just powers adapted to his body to the point that it doesn't even deform him. It's adaptive entirely. So his body is fine with all of these quote-unquote quirks. They're more like superpowers at this point, something that is built within himself, something that is perfectly adapted to his own body and basically genetic structure. Finally, Aizawa would tell them all to head out to get basically their PE uniforms on, and then eventually meet him outside, getting ready for a quirk assessment. When they arrive, Aizawa calls up Izuku first, telling him that he'll be starting the quirk assessment with a ball throw. Izuku would grab the ball, and Aizawa would explain, as the number one student, or at least the number one student from the entrance exam, he expects a lot from him. Izuku nods as he winds up and launches the ball. It goes soaring, and it goes about 1,500 meters, an insane amount that hasn't been seen since All Might himself. Izuku grips his hand to basically look at it to think, wow, he really does have that type of power, but as he looks over, Aizawa has his quirk active. Izuku looks at him weirdly and asks, why is his hair standing up? Trying to play coy, but at the same time, Aizawa has his suspicions. He questions Izuku. So your quirk isn't exactly deactivatable, huh? Izuku is confused but just shrugs it off, saying that he's never had his quirk deactivated, so he wouldn't know. But, I mean, it is a strength enhancement quirk, so maybe it's just built into his body by now, and he has worked really hard to strengthen that strength enhancement quirk. Izuku would walk over to the line, and Aizawa would nod, but he would be skeptical at the same time. He would continue talking and basically telling everyone who will go next, but people would begin to say that this seems like a lot of fun. Aizawa would remark that this isn't supposed to be fun, and this is no game, so he's going to put up some stakes. Whoever gets last in the exam will not be going to UA anymore. They'll be expelled, and they'll have to figure out where they're going to go from here on out. Aizawa would tell them all to keep going, and let's just say Izuku would blow away the competition. It wouldn't be even close. The only person or only people that would be relatively close to Izuku is Shoto Todoroki and also Katsuki Bakugo. But let's be honest, they're not that close either. Izuku, throughout this entire time, is starting to get used to his powers, slowly but surely. The reveal of All Might's strength enhancement quirk, or at least that's what he believes it to be from the DNA of All Might's and many others, he begins to realize that he has super strength, he has some sort of fire attacks, he has a way to cancel quirks like Aizawa, and many more. He has so much utility, and at the same time so much raw strength. Sometimes he'll even believe to himself that maybe he will overdo it sometimes. He might have to be careful in the long run. But after the assessment is over and done with, he was given first, and he would have to act excited as if he wasn't expecting something like this. Of course he should get first. He's a perfect being. At least that's what he was raised and built up to be. Izuku would basically wait for Aizawa to expel the last person, but he would then tell him that this was just a logical ruse to make them try their hardest. Izuku would shrug it off and would end up finishing his classes for the day and then leaving. After that, he would get some talking in with the League of Villains and also with Overhaul and eventually the people that kind of raised him in a way. But to be fair, it's not really raising when he's growing up in a small pod. He would eventually be able to speak with his mother and basically speak about what their goals are and what they are trying to accomplish overall. Of course, things would have to be limited. She can't tell him everything because he might go haywire, might do this, might do that. They need to be careful, especially with a being like Izuku. They don't necessarily have a way to keep him in check. But Izuku's already thinking for himself now. See, that's where they're wrong. They think that they still have him under control, but that's just not the case. Izuku is now learning and thinking for himself. Probably the worst thing that could possibly happen is this specifically. Izuku now realizing something. Maybe it's time for him to become a hero. Maybe it's time for him to really transcend and ignore all of these other people. He's going to be so powerful, so strong. Maybe he should use it to protect people. A part of him is telling him to do so. Maybe it's the All Might side. Maybe ironically enough, it's the Endeavor side. Maybe it's the Mirako. Maybe it's that other side of him from Aizawa and the other heroes telling him that his job is to protect, especially with the power that he has. But he's not sure. He gets that feeling or that instinct, but at the same time, he also gets that instinct sometimes that he'll see a strong fight. He'll see someone that is powerful, someone that may serve as a challenge, and that instinct of wanting to fight derives within him and drives him to do something drastic. Maybe that's something else. Maybe that's built in within him, or maybe that's every single person's DNA and the combination of their will to fight, in which their will to fight is extremely high, especially when we talk about people like All Might, Mirako, and many others. Endeavor himself has basically tried to build this bridge to cross it himself to catch All Might. Some unimaginable task that seems to be impossible, but that also is in Izuku. That idea, that motivation. So Izuku's not so sure, but the next day of UA would then finally arrive after he gets his information from Shigaraki and also the others, learning of the USJ attack that will happen soon to come. Izuku would arrive in Class 1A, and they would begin to speak, or Aizawa would begin to speak about what's going on. And of course, that would be pretty clear. They'll be doing a little bit of hero training, some actual training compared to what they did before. Quirk assessment is far different than hero training, so they'll be having someone else doing it for him, in which the door would swing open and All Might would come flying in. Izuku would almost stand to his feet and would have to restrict himself as All Might screams, "I am here," walking through the door like a normal person. Immediately, Izuku wants to fight him. He's almost breaking his desk out of anxiousness and just excitement, but he knows he has to relax. He needs to calm down. That fight will happen, eventually, of course. All Might would then tell everybody to meet him at Ground Gamma, that they're going to be doing a little bit of hero training. So Izuku gets on his hero outfit, which is just an altered version of the way he looks slightly, and he basically can make himself look slightly different, so it makes it look like he has a hero outfit on, because of course it's not like they designed and planned to have a hero outfit. And he had some ideas that he sent over to the support people, but of course that's not going to go through immediate. And eventually leading them to Ground Gamma. When they would arrive at Ground Gamma, All Might would begin to explain and say that they're waiting for one more person and then they'll begin. That person would finally arrive, and it would be Mirio Togata, someone that Izuku doesn't know very well, but as he begins to move around, he begins to tell something that within Mirio is a strong fighter. Not only that, it's far more than just being a strong fighter. His quirk is different, far different. It seems to be a mixture of two quirks, maybe even more? He's not so sure, but that will be answered when All Might tells them that it will be Mirio versus all of them at once. He would tell them that Mirio will definitely be up for the challenge and that they'll be surprised how powerful this person is. They begin their fight. Class 1A versus Mirio Togata, the successor to One for All, or the successor of All Might. And the fight would begin, and it would seem as if Mirio is dominating Class 1A. It's not even close, frankly, and everyone is getting taken out, one by one by one, but it seems like some of the stronger people want to wait their turn. They want their crack at Mirio by themselves, eventually leading it to being Izuku's turn. Izuku will stand there and he begins cracking his neck and then cracking his knuckles. You think this is a good idea? You really believe that you can defeat me? Izuku laughs and begins to smirk, and Mirio says that everyone else before him was cocky until, well, they were knocked out. Izuku charges forward, and as Mirio basically uses his permeation quirk to dodge him, Izuku immediately counters and can follow up exactly where Mirio decides to strike. Mirio unpermeates his hand to punch Izuku in the face, but just as he does, Izuku clashes with it with a punch himself. Izuku tells him that he saw his moves and he now knows exactly how his quirk works. Their fight begins, and Izuku is fighting him more or less based on just prediction, thinking and knowing where someone's going to be and how he's going to strike. He begins to try to predict the unpredictable, especially with Mirio's fight style, and it seems like they're dead even, at least for the moment. But until Mirio slips up. He slips up, leaving himself open, and Izuku lands a stern punch to the stomach that absolutely hurts terribly. He punches him directly in one of the kidneys, and Mirio would stagger backwards in complete pain, but he would then activate One for All. Izuku can tell that he was re-energized, reinvigorated, and it seems as if Mirio was ready to fight once again. Izuku would stand his ground and begin to fight him, obviously, again. They would begin to clash over and over and over again, and it seems like Mirio might be gaining some ground as he begins to amp up more and more, but Izuku begins to learn more and more, gaining more and more knowledge of One for All, more and more knowledge about how to accelerate his own powers, and as the fight continues on, the stronger seemingly Izuku is getting, and same with Mirio. But after a while, the fight is eventually stopped. All Might tells them that that's enough, and they look around to see that the area is completely destroyed, and on top of that, everyone else is already out cold. Izuku kind of brushes off some of the hits and tells Mirio that it would be fun to do this one more time in the near future. Mirio says the same as he kind of slightly limps and corrects his body because he can feel some of those punches that Izuku was landing, especially that first one that definitely caught him off guard. All Might congratulates Izuku, telling him that he knew he was talented, but this talented is miraculous. He's never seen someone grow and learn so fast, and Izuku is definitely someone extremely talented, and he'd be a very, very good hero in the near future. But Izuku begins to question All Might, asking about Mirio, that he was able to ramp his strength up, but it seems like his quirk is permeation, and he doesn't think that Mirio was even holding back that much, so how was he getting so much stronger? In which All Might makes up some dumb excuse that Mirio was just holding back a good bit, but he was starting to go all out with Izuku. Izuku sorta doesn't really believe this, and frankly he knows what this is all about and how it happened. He can make his assumptions because he's heard about All Might's power and All Might's strengths. He knows that it can be passed down and that this must be the person. Izuku is still taken back, and of course he knows that All Might wouldn't have been honest with him, but soon he'll learn more and more about exactly who Mirio is. After that class is said and done, they're all allowed to go to the nurse's office if need be, and eventually finishing up the day and going back quote-unquote home. Izuku would bring back some information to the League of Villains, telling them exactly who the successor of All Might is, or at least who he believes it to be. He's about 98% sure. He hasn't been able to 100% confirm it, but he can make his assumptions, and he's right there in terms of how correct he is. Especially, he then tells Overhaul as well, and he begins to relay information back toward his mother and other people that he needs to relay that information to. But of course, Izuku withholds some information that he feels he doesn't need to tell, his progression and all his power, and some other things as well. Izuku then the next day would obviously head to UA, and they would begin their next little training session, you can call it, and that involves the USJ. And this right here is where everything will flip on its head. Izuku sits in class listening to Aizawa, but it's as if it's just a buzz of conversation. Izuku would be thinking in his own head about what needs to go down, what needs to happen, and what's going to happen. He begins to remember the plans, begins to remember every last detail to the most degree, every last aspect. In a matter of no time, they're currently at the USJ, and he can hear the voice of Pro Hero 13 beginning to ring. She begins to say that they're here for rescue training. Izuku continues to listen, more and more and more. He begins to think and wait, and he begins to sense something coming from the middle of the USJ, and he can just feel this immense pressure boiling over him. As the portal opens up, many villains begin to pour out of it, and Aizawa tells Pro Hero 13 to protect the kids as he jumps into action. Izuku watches on as if his eyes are glazed, as if he's just going through the motions at this point. He feels weird. It seems as if he's just walking in a shadow, as if everything going on is not actually in his control, every last movement. He's portaled away, and eventually he's put exactly with the other villains. The other villains speak about killing All Might, about what that needs to be done, and Shigaraki acts as if he has basically complete control. He acts like he has complete control over Izuku, and on top of that, he's as if he's keeping him hostage, telling Aizawa that he might want to slow down and stop before something drastic really happens. Immediately, Aizawa is confused. What is he supposed to do? He's in a horrible situation. How did they do this so quickly? And why are they leveraging him? Why him of all people? Izuku sits there with Shigaraki's hand on his neck, but just as Aizawa decides to stop, decides that he won't keep fighting if it means that this kid is going to get killed, all of the villains around him drop dead, motionless, flatlined. Izuku is no longer in the hands of Shigaraki, and he stands in front of all of them. Izuku realized what's going on. That glaze was literal control. Whatever they did, whatever they mimicked, and whatever they changed in his machinery, or whatever they added to him when they were making him, they were trying to gain full control of his being. He realized something, that he was strong enough to break free. And that's exactly what he did. That glaze clears up, and it's as everything brightens up, and the world around him is now regular, changed. He now sees things for how it is. He looks towards Shigaraki and tilts his head, asking if he knew about this, asking if he knew that he truly did have control. Shigaraki is shocked to hear what Izuku is saying. Shigaraki shakes his head as if he knows something bad is going to happen. But Izuku just walks over toward them slowly but surely, telling them that he's decided something, and he'll understand quickly what. He slams Shigaraki to the ground and then tosses Kurogiri to the side. Obviously, Kurogiri just warp portals back into a position, but Shigaraki gets sent flying toward a wall as Kurogiri is able to save him just in time. Aizawa is shocked to see what's happening, but Izuku stops in his tracks as well, telling Aizawa that he needs to get out of here now. Aizawa says that he can't do that, but Izuku tells him there is no going back anymore. But he's confused. What is that supposed to mean? What are you talking about? Izuku raises his hands and says that he has free will now, and he will decide exactly what he wants. All Might would come blasting through the wall, basically screaming his normal phrase that he is here and ready to protect. But immediately Izuku points toward All Might and smiles and tells Aizawa that's what he wants. Aizawa is shocked to hear this. What is going on? As Izuku begins to reach out one arm, his left arm begins to change, turning into this odd looking figure. He grows in size to the point that he's 7, maybe 8 feet tall, towering over everybody. Izuku smiles and begins to talk, not sinisterly, but at the same time in a way of such threat, in a way of such emotion that he wants a fight. Immediately, All Might comes charging in to stop the villains, but Izuku steps in front of him, grabbing him by the face, slamming him into the ground, and he begins to shake his head. Not even as strong as Mirio. I knew it. He grabs All Might and throws him to the wall as Shigaraki begins to think that maybe he's slowly but surely back on his side, but a flame or a giant wave of fire gets sent towards Shigaraki and Kurogiri is forced to warp them out of the way. He begins to walk over toward All Might as he says not to worry, that after his death, he'll go after the League of Villains and he'll be able to basically take down whoever he wants, because all he wants right now is a challenge. He tells All Might if he doesn't give him that challenge, there's going to be dire consequences. All Might comes charging forward, delivering exactly what Izuku wants, but Izuku, technically, and being a tactician, is able to slip under every single punch, dodge every little bit, and absolutely obliterate All Might. This isn't even a fair fight. His DNA is built for exactly this fight alone. Every last bit of martial arts within his body and every last piece of DNA that allows him to counter All Might is there. He begins to counter and defeat All Might over and over and over again. The students are watching on, and Aizawa tells them all they need to leave now. Something is happening. Immediately though, as they're about to leave, the other heroes charge in. Aizawa tells them that they need to help All Might now or else. Immediately bullets would be shot toward Izuku, but Izuku would just dodge them with relative ease. One would graze his leg, but it wouldn't do immense damage. He would be able to shrug it off just enough. He grabs All Might by the head and begins to lift him up, telling every last hero that this symbol of peace wasn't a challenge, that he lost that title a long time ago. And Izuku himself, as he points the thumb at his face, he begins to say that All Might is not the perfect hero. To them, maybe he is, but perfect is only in regard of himself. He begins to throw All Might up as he plunges his hand through his chest, as blood begins to spill and the symbol of peace begins to bleed out. Izuku looks at them and says that there's no use even trying to save him. There's no point. Not at all. He begins to walk over toward them as he would appear in front of them in a matter of seconds. He would look them dead in the eyes as this hulking figure just hovers above all of them. He tells them all that this is the end. This is over. He won't be seeing them anytime soon unless they truly want to give him a challenge. But he now knows that quirks are inefficient, that these so-called quirks that they hold are nothing. He looks around to see if the Nomu is still currently there, and Izuku smirks to see that it got taken back. He now knows that, well, that Nomu wouldn't have stood a chance anyways, and they withdraw the Nomu to preserve what they've invested in it. Izuku looks at them, smirks, and then disappears. All of them are in complete shock, Aizawa especially, not knowing exactly what happened, but just as their shock wears off, they sprint toward the former symbol of peace, All Might, in hopes of saving him. But is there even a way to save All Might after that brutal injury? And what does this mean for Izuku's next steps in this world? And has he truly become a perfect being? Well, you'll have to find out in the next part of What If Deku Was a Bio Android. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, make sure to leave a sub, make sure to leave a comment down below, all that good stuff. And yeah, I hope y'all enjoyed, and as always, I hope y'all come back for the next part. And yeah, that's about it. I hope y'all have an amazing day. Later.